But welcome, this is our 9th meeting, and we've got some good speakers for you today. I do want to just, like always, we just kind of remind folks what we're here to do together. So the purpose is to connect national health and climate data experts and invite us all to exchange knowledge and priority tribal adaptation and resilience data needs. We're sharing tools and practices. We're kind of hunkering down on these constructive conversations around real data and real tools, and I just love it. It feels very workshopy. And in general, we're trying to explore opportunities to address some of these gaps that we might see or build upon the solutions that already exist. And so oftentimes we're putting ourselves in the shoes of folks that are working within or for tribes that they really need easy access to meaningful community-ready data, climate and health data, to help them identify vulnerabilities and make decisions about where they can invest their limited resources in strategies, right? So that's what we're here to do today. We're generally collectively trying to come up with solutions, and I think we have a really good team that always has good questions and always has good ideas. So I have to admit a few more folks that are here. So I want to welcome everybody, like we always do, to just introduce yourself over chat. But if you are brand new and you've never been here before, to introduce yourself, we like to haze our new members. No, we just like to invite you to say hello out loud, because we want to get to know everybody. We're forming relationships here that are have been nice. So how about, let's see, Bitta, I think I'm saying that right. Thank you for being here. Do you want to say hello?
Yes, thank you. Yes, you said my name correctly, Bitta. This is the end of my 6th week. I have to go back and count. Or the middle of my 6th week as the Deputy Secretary for Environmental Justice, Tribal Affairs, and Border Relations. And Lori kindly invited me to this meeting, just really to be a fly on the wall as I get introduced to the tribal communities and the advocates who work with them. So I appreciate her invitation. I appreciate learning from you all. I am a Navajo, and I worked and lived on the Navajo Nation for 6 months shy of 20 years until moving over to this position. So it's a pleasure to be at Cali, PA, and with California.
We're so happy to have you. I keep hearing your name. In fact, just in prep for our conversation today and talking to Walker and Laura, so they suggested we connect with you. So here you are.
Here I am. Yeah, I'm very interested in tribal data for, as you can imagine, for Cal and Vital Screen. So.
And we're really excited that we have recently made a connection with the Federal HHS new Office of Climate Change and Health Equity. And so I want to introduce folks that have joined to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Angel, would you want to start?
You go for it, Shubha. I'll turn on my camera shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shubha Yusaha. I am a health scientist with the Climate and Health Program at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta. And I'm currently on detail as a senior advisor to this new Office of Climate Change and Health Equity. We have, it's a brand new office. We were sort of formally announced, end of August. We have sort of, big mandates. I'll maybe just sort of very quickly go through them. The first one is an obvious one. We are sort of trying our best, to connect the dots within HHS, to make, vulnerable communities as resilient as possible, to climate impacts. The second one is really ambitious, where we really want to sort of connect the dots in a way where climate actions, climate strategies that are being undertaken across sort of non-health sectors. We essentially we try our best to identify what the health benefits are associated with those strategies, and bring health to the forefront of those discussions. principally keeping in mind, the social determinants of health, taking sort of as broad a perspective as possible, looking at interventions at the housing sector, in built environment, in transportation and energy, and trying to identify, where the connections with sort of better, more resilient, public health and health systems might be. And the third one is a very new one for HHS, where we are looking at, healthcare facility resilience and, trying out ways to, first start with the federal health system to decarbonize the health system. There was, the recently concluded conference of parties that happened in Glasgow. HHS had its sort of first delegation ever, where Admiral Levine, made very ambitious commitments, where, the federal healthcare system, made these promises, to decarbonize and become carbon neutral in the years to come. We are working very closely, not only with our federal partners, but, private partners as well, trying to mobilize as much, commitment and action as possible, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from, in the healthcare sector itself. We are here, primarily to learn and listen, and sort of offer our assistance, and, anything that we can do to, enrich and improve this conversation, and, this effort to, build, better information systems, let's say, around, climate and health, specifically for, tribal regions and communities. We would love to do so. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Angel, do you want to introduce yourself also?
Thank you. That's why I let Shubha go first. Fred got all the overview. My name is Angel Ip. I'm also in the HHS Office of Climate Change and Health Equity on detail from EPA Region 10, where I was working with Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, Washington tribes with waste management and brownfields and environmental health programs. And we're really just excited and really appreciate the invitation to join this meeting, and wanting to learn a little bit more and make sure that we're engaging thoughtfully, especially with the data pieces of this work. And I'm looking forward to working with you all, being part of this network. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We're just excited that your office exists and that you've reached out and you're here to join our crew of thinkers. So we just really welcome you. I think Kevin Coronado, have you been here before? Am I blanking?
No, I have not.
Okay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, my name is Kevin Coronado. I'm a tribal member of the North Fork Rancheria of Mono Indians here in Central California. We are one of the traditionally associated tribes of Yosemite National Park. I'm currently working on my environmental science degree. I'm in my sophomore year, and I'm a Pathways intern with Bureau of Indian Affairs, and I'm working under Chaz Jones of ATNI right now.
Ah, okay. Well, great. Welcome.
Yay,
Glad you're here.
students. I love students.
Glad to be here. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else that I didn't catch that is brand new?
I am brand new, Angie, and I'm calling in by phone. This is Sharon Habib. I'm a climate adaptation planner and research scientist with the South Central Climate Adaptation Science Center, which includes Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and New Mexico, which is where I'm located. Prior to this, I was doing other climate adaptation planning work. I worked for the Pueblo Laguna and with a vulnerability assessment that included health and wellness, and also was the project manager for an NSF pilot project at Laguna on tribal data, which entailed developing a tribal census. So I'm just going to listen today because the phone makes it much more complicated, but I'm glad to be here.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. For folks that are new, you're kind of getting an inkling of the hive mind we've comprised here. It's comprised of people that are from various agencies from all over the country. We have researchers, we have folks that are in universities, we have private sector, we have tribal folks, we have folks in tribal organizations, we've got folks that are data providers. So that's the group we've assembled here today. So let's go ahead and dive into the meat of what we're going to do together today. So we have some guests. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, but they're here from Cal EPA's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. So that's at Cal EPA. So we're going to get to them right after we get through our member announcements, which are usually a roundtable. And I have one selfish little request of you all today that we'll get to in just a second. All right, so member announcements. We usually give a few minutes for folks to just share anything that's in the space of tribes, climate change, health, and data that might be beneficial for others on the call to know about. This is just an exchange of information to keep us all up to speed on the latest. I have one thing to share here, and I want to open up the floor to anybody.
I'll just jump in real quick. 18I's got lots going on, but Don Sampson, I may have already announced it, but Don Sampson stepped down as the program director back in December as he transitioned to the executive director of the Umatilla tribe. And I am now serving as the interim director for 18I climate change program. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Or condolences.
All right, others? Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Great. Thanks, Angie. Hi, everybody. Lisa, she, her pronouns, associate planner in the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research. I'm so excited. We are about to release an upcoming request for applications. We're hoping to post it next Friday. So that'll come out of the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research, OPR. It'll be to support the development of the Vulnerable Communities Platform. There is a tribal set aside as part of that package. So I can't go into the details before it's released, but I will make sure to share it with this network. We're really, really excited. The solicitation should be open for at least a month. Thanks.
Wow. Do you have a link you want to share in the chat?
Not yet, but as
Okay.
soon as it is live and posted, I will definitely share. Thanks.
Awesome.
I feel like we've got some insider trading opportunities here. Sell your stocks now before it goes live.
Yeah, you know, part of what we envisioned when we started this thing was if there were opportunities to kind of partner up on some solutions that we could talk about that in this forum as well. So super cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right, anybody else? All I wanted to mention here was there was a really good guidebook that has been released by the White House on the infrastructure law with nice tables inclusive of all the budgets that are being infused by the infrastructure law. And there are some things there that are applicable to what we talked about, including things like a pretty big infusion for the tribal resilience budget. But I'm wondering if anybody else has had any read or intel on that investment or really any other investment that might be contributing towards solutions for tribal resilience data. And when I get a chance here, I'm gonna actually drop the link to that guidebook. It's just really handy for everybody to take a look at. There's a whole resilience chapter. Okay, any other roundtable updates here?
Angie, can I make a mention about some research we've been doing on snow in the West?
Yeah, please.
Cool. So we just put together, and I'll put a link here and an open access link because people have had a hard time accessing the article. So we've been working on snowpack loss in the Western US and have found some kind of scary results as could be expected. But part of what the paper really focuses on is adaptation strategies or mitigation strategies. And a lot of them kind of focus on maybe larger scale things. And I would like to see more done at the smaller scale, say even the tribe type scale, to increase water reliability. So I wanted to share that, and in case anyone reads it and gets some ideas, but I think there's a lot of potential to really expand some of the stuff that we did to make it more directly applicable to tribal communities that rely on snow and snowpack and how those are changing, and kind of now putting almost a clock on how long we have to really figure out what we're going to do before we do lose our snowpack. So just some updates on there that hopefully can be applicable to a wide range of folks throughout the Western US and Canada as well.
Do you have a need? Are you asking for some help identifying communities?
That would be awesome. Or just sharing it around and getting, if you want to, if you work with folks that live in places that once were snowy or still are snowy but are rapidly warming or rely on snow to provide water or any other kinds of resources, yeah, just share it around, and any ideas, we are very excited to hear how we can make the work better or more useful, and any other kinds of knowledge that could be shared would be great.
Laura, you can't tell, but I'm looking at you. Yeah, go ahead, Shasta.
That sounds like something maybe our student, Kevin, at North Fork, I'm sure that there's snow in and around, or there used to be snow in and around there. So he could be a great potential resource.
There's a bit left.
There
We
you
got
go.
a
There's
lot.
data point, a bit.
You know, Laura, I wonder if it would be worthwhile to share some of your listening sessions. So OWEHA at Cali PA has done some listening sessions with tribes, and that came up a lot from what I could tell.
Yeah, North Fork participated, and
Yeah.
they're also doing a deep dive report. So it's been really wonderful working with them.
Cool. Well, Ben, that was a nice segue into my one selfish thing that I want us to do together before we move into our presenters and our discussion for the day. So Shasta and I are planning this, it's really a training, Tribal Climate and Health Adaptation Summit. That's a large word, we might change that word, but it's going to be at Paula, and it's going to be in July 13th and 14th. And as a 2-day event, it's going to be kind of an intimate gathering, and it's really intended to, what are we calling it? Getting to the heart of climate vulnerability. And I'm bringing it up to you all here because I think you might have some suggestions for other speakers we might reach out to, where we have some gaps in our program. And so we have some, we've harassed many of you by now. So thank you all to those of you who have already accepted. And then we have some remaining gaps here that we just thought we would ask the hive mind if you know anybody. We have some feelers out for a keynote, but we are still looking for one. So somebody who's sort of a bigger name, somebody who's definitely like right in the pocket of health, tribes, and climate change. Somebody who could speak to that. Somebody who folks working within tribes might actually know and be really, or at least the the agency would be something that they would be interested in hearing from. The other gaps that we've got here right now, we've got, this is sort of giving you an inkling of where we're at on planning this. So this is day one. We're going to do some breakouts, and it's going to be as interactive as we possibly can. And so we're looking for facilitators of breakouts. We've got quite a few. In fact, some of you that are on the call today, thank you so much for accepting that invitation, but we'd be looking for more. And this is intended to be an in-person event. So if that's something that, if this is something you could see yourself potentially wanting to attend and being willing to facilitate a breakout, along with maybe, playing other roles that I'll get to, that would be very useful. You'll notice here, you're part of getting to the heart of climate vulnerability. We're building knowledge about tribal vulnerability, but we are also trying to help folks that attend to themselves a little bit while they're there. So that's this taking care of self and others, where we're going to have some folks in our network who are very good at the personal reflection and the self-care, the psychosocial resilience piece, end off each of our day with that sort of more personal and peer-based reflection activity. But if you have somebody in mind that's really awesome at that, that would be something that we would love to hear. We have some folks in mind, but nobody confirmed yet. Okay, and then day two, and actually chime in wherever you want. You could interrupt if you're thinking of somebody, or throw something in the chat, but I'm just going to give you the full scope of what we're looking for. Some of you, Osamu, Lori, Claudia Brown from CDC have already said yes to health and safety perspectives. This is sort of an agency perspectives session on health. So, and we could use one more here, and we have a pretty big California representation here already. So maybe somebody from somewhere else might be great. The more tribally focused, the better. We also have this session here on the latest research. So we're really looking at latest research into how tribes are affected by or addressing climate impacts. And thank you, Ben Hatchett, for already accepting our invitation to present. He's going to present on water, right? Your extreme heat and water. That's right. I think I'm getting that right.
That maybe I can definitely do that too, but I think it was more on the air pollution side.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
Um,
Thank you. You know too much, too many things.
But we can certainly talk about water. I think the like water, air pollution, health, climate change nexus is, we're seeing it all come together as we lose snow and the forests catch on fire. Unfortunately.
Hey.
This is gonna be a fun session. No.
There's lots of positives we can take from it, and
It's
I think we
okay.
have a huge opportunity ahead.
Yeah, cool. And then Shasta, do you want to mention what Kyle White's going to talk about? I can't remember.
He was going to give us some updates on the latest on data and tribal resilience efforts on the climate piece.
Okay. Yeah, so we could use one or two more people. So if you have researchers in your network that are doing this kind of sort of what's emerging, that maybe hasn't made its way into one of these big national assessments yet, but is would be really useful for tribes in particular.
And it's possible to participate as a presenter, to do it remotely. That's how Kyle White is coming to us. He doesn't have the time to travel from Michigan, but he will be able to port in, as we've all learned to do with this new technology.
The last one here I want to mention is this, we're gonna have a session on getting continued help. So once we're gonna really dive into how to do vulnerability assessments and really diving into the data and doing some hands-on work. And then we're gonna talk about how to get continued help after this 2-day event. And so Chaz, thank you so much. You've already accepted our invitation. Looking for a couple of others, people that represent places to go to get further help. For tribes. So for somebody who's working with a tribe or in a tribe, somebody they can call for more help. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and see if just anybody has any thoughts, and you can always email me too.
We're hoping to have the save the date and everything out for this relatively soon, but right now it's still in the planning stages, so we haven't started to solicit attendees yet. We're still building out the agenda and the program. So anything that you want to add or participate? Paula is beautiful in July, although it's also 852 billion degrees, but we have a pool. It's fine.
I dropped my email address here again, just so if you have any suggestions you want to send them my way, that would be awesome. I know, HHS, we're in talks with you. We hope to find somebody. You would just be perfect. Okay, let's move into the meat of our conversation. I get to introduce Walker Wieland and Laura August. They are research scientists with Cali PA's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. They are the key developers of the nation's first environmental justice screening tool. It's called Cal EnviroScreen. Many of you are familiar with it, but if you're not in California, you might not be. But it's a leading tool, I think, across the nation. But it's an interesting one because this is not specifically a climate adaptation tool, but they have really interesting ways to present information that's related to vulnerability, and I use it. I use it for vulnerability assessments here in California. They're grappling with all sorts of ways to serve tribes and make their data accessible and applicable for tribes, and so we get to hear all about that today. We're going to hear from them first with a presentation, then we get to have our normal discussion. I get to hand it off to you, Walker and Laura. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thanks so much for having us. I think I joined maybe some of the early meetings. We usually have our section meeting at this time, so I'm not always able to join, but nice to reconnect again. So I'm Laura August, research scientist with OEHA. I think you know our acronym already, and I'm here with my teammate Walker. Zoe over there also too is one of our students working on some other work. So hi, nice to see you. Yeah, so we have just a couple slides. We want to leave a lot of time to share some of our maps and do some demo and answer questions, and really hope to not bore you to death with slides. So we just have a couple, and I think Walker is going to go over a couple of slides, and then we'll do demos and just really answer questions and focus on any specific data sets you want to know about.
Hey everyone, Walker Wheeland with OEHA. Yeah, by a couple, we mean 13. So
shoot,
like, if
okay.
you go more than 2, don't get upset. It's like a couple of a couple. It's kind of like
We have so many to draw from, so.
Yeah, it's not 50, but it's not 2. Thanks everyone for your attention. So I'm going to pop through the slides and then pass it over to Laura for a demo. So some of you might be familiar with Cal Enviroscreen. Screen. You know, what we're trying to do with this tool is look at relative burdens in California. We categorize all of these different data sets into these big buckets of pollution burden, but also population vulnerability. It's a cumulative impact tool, so we're looking specifically at the combination of burdens and vulnerability, which is this red to green map of California that is at the census tract geography, kind of gives you a sense of how we're representing it. It's an indicator-based tool, 21 indicators in version 4.0. There are several, sometimes several data sets within a given indicator, all coming from different sources. And as mentioned, you know, the purpose of the tool is to identify communities, or as we're defining it at the census tract level, across the state that are disproportionately burdened. So it, you know, many ties into environmental justice here, of course. We just released a new version of the tool last October. And this little Venn diagram, you know, explains it well. It's the combination of pollution burden, but also people's vulnerability to the effects of pollution. We found several of the factors on the vulnerability side are essentially risk multipliers and reduce people's resiliency to the effects of pollution. So here are all the indicators in the tool, and you can see that it's wide ranging. There's a big pollution focus to Cal Enviroscreen because we are at Cal EPA, and you know, one of the concepts we're you know, illustrating here is that, you know, if the boards and departments in Cal EPA can reduce pollution, then cumulative impacts in many ways can be reduced throughout California. So we pull data from Cal EPA, but also from other departments around California, from US EPA, from, you know, a couple of national data sets. And so it's a lot of information wrangling, cleaning, spatial analysis, and then like displaying and communicating results too. So we could pop into any of these indicators and talk more about them. And maybe we could do that during the demo, but you see that we have these components under pollution burden. One is exposure, like what are people coming into contact with? The other one may involve like accidental contact of pollutants and environmental effects, but it's also about the psychosocial stress associated with being near one of these facilities, or odors or noise coming from these facilities, or you know, impaired water bodies is an example of one where you might not be able to fish or swim in a given water body because of pollution occurring there. On the other side, we have these components of sensitive populations as health effects of people in communities, where if you have a higher rate of asthma, you're going to be more susceptible to poor air quality, for example. So those are what I'm you know, thinking about and talking about when we talk about these multipliers. And then socioeconomic factors. This is American Community Survey-based data where you know, a lot of it's about economic resilience and people's education levels and employment levels. Linguistic isolation is there in regards to risk communication. And so all of these indicators, you know, we spend a lot of time in our team researching what sort of indicators and data sets, you know, can go into Cal Enviroscreen to best represent cumulative impact conditions across California. And this pie chart, oh, you know what, I can move this. Okay, sorry, the little zoom bar was in my way. And so this cycle, represents what we're trying to do at OEHA and at Cali PA for Cal and Virus Screen, where when we release this version, we put out a draft of the version that every time we come out. We just came out with 4.0 in the fall, and there was a 4.0 draft in the spring. We get all sorts of public comment where we hold these workshops and we get feedback from people. Some people say this is pretty good. Some people say this actually kind of sucks. I don't think this actually represents like conditions in my community. You should actually be considering factor A or data set B or issue C, because that's what's really affecting our community members. That information or that feedback we get helps form future research that we do on future versions of the tool. So we have released version 4.0, and we're wrapping up some items around 4, thinking about what's to come for the next version of the tool, which is why it's important to be looking at the public feedback we get, but also to be chatting with various experts, such as those on the call here today, to be able to help us think about where we should be focusing our energy and our resources. And so, we don't obviously we're not, we have a pretty small team, and we're not out there collecting this information. We rely on departments throughout California and throughout other areas, as mentioned. Here's just a list of some of the places we pull from our data. One of the main criteria around this data is that it needs to be a statewide sort of issue or concern with good quality updated data, and something that we can in turn make publicly available. So there's a snapshot or like showing conditions element of Cal and Virus Screen, but there's also a reproducibility and transferability element around Cal and Virus Screen, where we're trying to empower various people that can take Cal and Virus Screen and overlay it with their own analysis, or maybe take a data set and do some sort of more customized analysis as well. And so, within the tool, we have all of these different kinds of data sets, concentrations of particulates in the air, number of Superfund sites or cleanup sites around you, rates of asthma. And so we have to standardize all of these data so that we can combine them in a meaningful way that produces this overall Cal and Virus Screen score. We do that with a percentile rank approach, 0 to 100. So if you're 50th percentile, or maybe I'll just go from the example here, if you're 92nd percentile in particulate matter, that means that PM levels or particulate matter 2.5 levels in your community are higher than 92% of the rest of the state. So that's the relative ranking approach that we use in Cal and Virus Screen, that provides a way for entities to prioritize various issues in communities, but also allows us to communicate the results of the information and combine all of the data sets together too. So, this schematic gives you a sense also of the various indicators in the tool. But, I like this one because it shows that Cal and Virus Screen is really a collection of maps. And so all of these little oblique angle images are all one community, and these maps are all layered on top of one another. And so you can start to get a sense of, well, yes, you can look at these cumulative results, but you can also peel it back more and look at individual factors, and maybe even combinations of factors that might be more suited for the kind of work that you're doing. So we've developed some products around 4.0 that we're really excited about sharing and developing and refining. It's something that we've got these things out there, but we are committed to improving them over time. One is called the Cal and Virus Screen Hub. It's conceptually an open data site that right now contains our maps, our reports, and various data in various formats. But ideally, we want to federate to other open data sites, such as the California Open Data Portal, and allow other websites to be able to connect here. So it's easier to get to the resources you need. On the top right, we've got our indicator maps, which Laura will show a demonstration of, where you can look at individual factors in CalEnviroscreen. We have some training videos associated with the tool that are broken out into individual modules, whether you'd like to learn about the history or the indicators or the results. And then we have a product that we're still developing, but we're working on getting out, hopefully soon for everyone, is a data dashboard where you can start to filter by geography and filter by attributes. So you can really focus in on the subset of data that you might need. You know, one of the things that you might have not seen in the indicators slide was an indicator of race or ethnicity or percent non-white. So that was an indicator in the very first version of the tool, but it was actually removed around a law in California that limited the use of certain tools when race was a factor. So we do produce a supplemental analysis along every version of CalEnviroscreen that shows that cumulative impacts are still disproportionately located in communities of color throughout the state. So this is one of our, leading kind of graphics around it. When you look at the least polluted neighborhoods in California, it's 67% white, and when you look at the most polluted neighborhoods, it's 10% white and 90% non-white. So we have resources around this and are essentially showing that cumulative impacts and burdens in the state and also in the country disproportionately impact people of color. So I know that this is not purely a California-centric crowd, so I will just mention like higher level that the tool is used in government statute and California law in a number of ways. But it also has these other kinds of uses. There are, research applications, of course. The tool is used as a model for other groups around the country in terms of how they might create their own, cumulative impact maps. So the lower left-hand screenshot is from the Houston Galveston region, where they're, doing a lot of the same things that we're doing and producing a map. And so there's a lot of really interesting and sort of creative ways that we've seen CalEnviroscreen used, and it's honestly difficult to track all of the different types of uses around it, but it's but there are a lot of different ways that the tool can be used. So what's next? We've got a couple of deliverables that we're focusing on getting out, kind of like post 4.0 items that we're really focused on wrapping up. That feedback loop that I was talking about continues, where we're taking into consideration comments that we're getting, feedback that we're getting, and thinking about how to prioritize the next couple of years of research that our team is doing. And then the last 3 bullets here are kind of like these, I don't know if emerging is the right idea, because they've been around for a while, but they're really important and really complicated and intensive projects that we're working through, but that we have identified as priorities for our program. So lots of interest in evaluating cumulative burden change over time or individual indicator change over time. There are absolutely data gaps in CalEnviroscreens, and it's not a silver bullet that does everything. And so how do we continue to fill in data gaps around tribal and other rural areas? How do we address climate change and indicators around climate change as being, factors to include or produce analyses around alongside CalEnviroscreen? And then there's been a lot of interest as well in like representing these data sets and indicators at a local level, whether it be an assembly district or a city or a county. And so how to do that where the data is more interoperable geographically, but you can also bring in potentially other data sets. And we're providing, or we're trying to provide more of a template where people can take our data and just use it in a lot of different ways. So I think that's my last slide. And
I think so, yeah.
I'll pass it
Sorry,
over
I
to you,
snuck a
Laura,
couple
for
extras.
a little demo.
Great, thanks, Walker. And yeah, if folks have any questions or any specific indicators they want to see, I can see if I can answer both of them. I'm just getting my screen share set up. I think I see a question.
Hey, you guys, there's a couple questions now. Do you want to take them at the end or do you want to take them now?
Let's take them now. How about that, Laura? What do you think?
Sure, yeah. Zoom likes to drive me nuts where I can't put the people on the other side. Okay, yeah. We don't use Zoom as much. Yeah, do you want to go, Walker, can you tell me who we got questions from, or since I can't
see?
Shubayu's got his hand up.
Wow, yeah.
Quick question, that's just fantastic, Walker. Is there any plans of, making this, communicate real-time information to people? Thinking about PM 2.5, thinking about air quality issues, specifically, how bad, the wildfire situation has been in California. Is there a need? Number one, because any technical innovation that you do is resource intensive, and so is there sort of a felt need as to folks would sort of benefit from this providing sort of real-time information rather than this hate to say static, but it's somewhat in sort of that spirit.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Yeah, some of the wildfire data are incorporated into measures of PM 2.5, but also wildfire smoke is represented from PM 10, and obviously there's this episodic super intense periods. So when we represent our indicator of PM 2.5 over like a 3-year period, it washes it out, and it's not necessarily as representative as some of the impacts that people are really feeling, especially over the past couple of years. It would be a big, Laura, you can chime in, it would be a big departure from how we represent Cal Enviro Screen. We need sometimes a couple of years of data to be able to represent various indicators. Another big thing is that the results, I don't want to say need to, but in some senses, the data kind of needs to stay consistent because it's tied to policy and it's tied to funding and investment in communities. And so that one of the things we're trying to do around open data in Cal Enviro Screen is unlock these various channels where that people can grab a more recent snapshot of the data if they wanted to. But in terms of us providing the information on more of a real-time basis, it would be a pretty big change in terms of how we're kind of going through the process now.
Yeah, no, I think that you captured that, Walker, just in terms of it being used to identify disadvantaged communities in the state for climate investments, where these projects, grant fund cycles may take a couple years. Some stability around that is necessary, and just the sheer amount of work that it takes to do some of these, take a couple years to process. So thanks.
Serena, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I have 2 questions, but the first one maybe you guys can answer. I didn't know that you guys had another presentation, but I'll just ask it really quick. And my question is, and I saw on your slide that you guys are talking about how there are gaps for tribal communities and also for rural communities. And I just kind of wanted to hear if you wanted to speak to that a little bit and the next steps. I know Cal Enviro Screen 4.0 was just released. And I guess what else is missing in the next iteration, what might be necessary. And then I'll just say the second question really quick. I work on the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, and I see how there's a need for a Cal Enviro Screen and how Cal Adapt is really useful as well. But I do see how there's a potential for those two to come together. And has there ever been any conversations on those two platforms coming together in any sort of capacity? And what I mean by that is looking at climate change impacts down the line, which Cal Adapt does, but at a very broad scale, and looking at more local impacts that, and cumulative, historical, and also just, and it's not real time, but it's more recent impacts that Cal Enviro Screen looks at. Has there ever been conversations on those two coming together in some way?
Yeah, thanks. Really good questions. And I can take the first one on some of the rural and tribal data gaps. So as you probably this group knows, a lot of the same or some of the types of data might not be available at the tribal scale, or there could be a lot of some data gaps. So, and within being in Cal EPA, we recognize a lot of the inputs, a lot of these environmental data sets, tribes have their own jurisdiction over, some of this data and what is reported and not even required to be reported to state databases. So, yeah, we know, like for our drinking water indicators, for example, we don't have all of the tribal water system data. And for a lot of our site-based data, where we have some gaps there in terms of the sites in there. So, we've been able to make some progress. For example, we were able to include some water system information for tribes that purchase from other local water systems, for example, to kind of fill in those gaps. But yeah, we want to kind of continue to explore where we can fill in some of those gaps. I did want to just mention, though, as part of one of the major uses of Cal Enviroscreen is Cal EPA identifying disadvantaged communities for prioritization of climate investments in the state, where tons of money is going to these prioritized communities. And I can, maybe Walker can put it in the chat, or I can put it in later. There was Cal EPA is updating that process, and as part of that, are going to also, in addition to the high scoring places in Cal Enviroscreen, are also going to prioritize and include the areas on federally recognized tribes in addition to these Cal Enviroscreen places, in recognition that there are these data gaps and that that they're just going to be included as well. And so, yeah, I think Walker put that in as well. So, I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, but at least tribes are going to be eligible, at least for this funding pot, and as well as we kind of try to address some of these. On the second, yeah, oh, and maybe I'll just mention one other, because I do want to show you guys a couple things. Yeah, Walker, do you want to take the CalAdapt one? And I also know we have Lisa on here about working on the vulnerable communities platform and the intersection of that, if she also wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah. For sure, I'll just mention something, and then I'm happy to pass it over to Lisa if she wants to give us a little update. But yeah, we've been in contact with CalAdapt over the past few years. From a data perspective, just making the Cal Enviroscreen data accessible on a couple of their maps, and I think that has happened as just an overlay. So it's not really doing this like something Serena, I think you're describing is a little bit more sophisticated, where it's like looking at these forward-looking projections, but also considering, localized impacts in communities. But we've been thinking about how to provide the Cal Enviroscreen data just in a more accessible way. And then in the past year and a half or so with Lisa and her team, we've been chatting about making Cal Enviroscreen data available on a platform that the Office of Planning and Research is working through, called Vulnerable Communities Platform. And I think the idea there is to take Cal Enviroscreen and a ton of other really fantastic information and have it as more of like a centralized location for a lot of different data, related to vulnerability, but also community resiliency. Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else.
Sure. Yeah. Fantastic lead up, and thanks for the plug, Laura and Walker. And thank you for the question, Serena. This is definitely something that I think for California, like our state agencies, we've heard repeatedly that this is still, a gap. And so this is a gap that we are trying to fill with the Vulnerable Communities platform. We are very much in conversation with OEHA and our wonderful partners at Cal EPA and all these other places that have offered a really effective model around like how we incorporate really rich input from communities throughout many different parts of the process, and thinking about the data management pieces. And of course, what we are trying to stand up is not in competition with Cal Enviroscreen, recognizing that that is an incredible comprehensive tool that really looks at pollution burden, looks at these historical pieces of data, and this like holistic understanding of health and sensitivity. The Vulnerable Communities platform is intended to be a climate adaptation resilience tool. So looking at climate projection data that's coming from CalAdapt and other sources, really learning on the sensitivity side from Cal Enviroscreen and other references, spaces, and then adding this component around adaptive capacity. We have some really great models coming from CDPH, the CDC, and other spaces, trying to flesh that out for California. And then of course, really ground truthing and making sure that at the end of the day, whatever we are pulling together feels accessible, it feels actionable. And so we'll also be learning from OEHA and others there in terms of how are we translating and communicating this, and really focusing on communities that we know right now are undercounted, or under-resourced in the data itself. So that's where tribal communities, rural communities, unincorporated communities, a lot of our communities that we know, we've already heard loud and clear, are not feeling as comprehensively rendered. What does it look like to try and supplement and really focus on those gaps? So that's the work that is like actively under development right now, but I'm so glad you asked the question. So I'll back off and hand it back over to the OEHA folks. Thanks.
I know you guys want to do some demos, so let's get to that. I just want to make one other point on that topic, which is it seems like the beauty of the CalEnviro screen is this cumulative burden calculation that's looking across data to make some assertion about vulnerability that's not in things like CalAdapt right now or any of the other tools really, for the most part, the relative ranking, I guess, or the cumulative, calculation. Is that something, Lisa, that you guys are thinking about? Like that model building into whatever you're building?
Yeah, I don't think we will produce a raw score at the end of the day in the way that a CalEnviro screen does. There are like a lot of political considerations there. And also part of our purview is to look across different climate impacts. And so just out of recognition, like a raw score for wildfire impact is very different than flooding. Does that really point you towards actionable solutions and adaptations? Probably less so. So we're still figuring it out.
Okay, so back to you, Laura and Walker. Let's see some demos.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. So yeah, just wanted to, and we could share these emails or these links with URLs later or pop them in the chat, but this is our main page for our 4.0 update. And this is where you can access reports. And, if you want to dig into why we picked the indicators we did, maybe important context, like understanding some of how we picked the socioeconomic indicators, like the scientific rationale between the link to being vulnerable to pollution. That's all in our report. You can access our web tools that I'll demo in a second here. As Walker mentioned, the race ethnicity analysis. We have a story map and a PDF report there. At the very bottom, for technical folks I know on this call, is where you can access a lot of our data, data dictionary, Excel spreadsheet, where you can download, get the data by census tract, and all of the raw scores too, for example, like the PM concentrations, not just the percentiles. GIS files as well. And then Walker mentioned, sorry, I skipped over it, our hub repository where you can also find a lot of these data products and GIS files. So I'm going to just pop over to our indicator map. This is our results map, that green to red cumulative map of the relative ranking of the cumulative pollution burdens. I think it might be just better just to walk through the indicator map, but this again, you can do a search by census tract or address and you get all of the information. I'll just click on a big one here. As I said, I wouldn't do it, but you get all the info. But I think it might be more for this group good to just dig down into some of the individual layers. So we have an indicator map where you can peel apart the 21 different layers into CalEnviro screen, the 13 pollution indicators and the other population indicators. So yeah, so you get here. So might be just interesting to take a look. Angie suggested a lot of times, I guess you guys go to maybe look at Paula, for example.
Yes.
Take a look at how does the tool perform in Paula, which is only one census tract, I did notice, but we can walk through that. So yeah, so here on the right, you can do a search. This worked earlier. This works pretty similar to a Google search. So it did come up, but I recommend sometimes too, just a Google map. If you get copy and paste the coordinate, the latitude, longitude, and plug it in there, it'll take you there as well. So yeah, so this takes you, so it says here's the census tract. And one thing you can do here is this little button at the top is a doc. We're actually really excited about that because that never used to exist before, and you can see, I'm gonna pop that over. You can see the census tract boundary, the population. Obviously one, thing we talked about, this is a census tract scales tool. So tribal boundaries are going to be a lot different and a lot of times smaller and maybe encompassed in a larger census tract as well. So we'll talk about maybe some ideas for that in 1 second. And here you can get all of the information, and then you can pan through and say, well, what's the drinking water score in this area as I'm looking at here? And it should, if all goes well, take you to that same place. A little slower with the screen share. It doesn't, it takes you to the same place, but you got to click on it again. So I'm sorry, I'm clicking here. So this one actually has a high drinking water score. So meaning that it has a higher number of contaminants in drinking water. And that could be something that we could follow up ground truthing about, tribal water system data, or what data feeds into, what community water system feed into there. But we have supplemental information too about, the contaminants that were highest in there. So, all of this is available. For example, impaired water shows you the surface, the water bodies, the rivers and streams and oceans, and they're contributing the contaminants in there in the water bodies. And let's see, I got 2 minutes, so I'm gonna go. I just wanted to pop.
So maybe if we just hang out on one for a second, I think this is what I do when I'm doing a vulnerability assessment. I will, maybe I'm Paula, maybe I'm another tribe, and I dive in and I get it, and there's a snapshot. It's 1 year, it's the latest year, and it's not a trend, but it's better than anything else I find most of the time. And so I peel back in, and the census tract is not perfectly aligned to the boundary of the tribe, but it's the best I'm going to get for the most part. Obviously, a tribal boundary would be ideal, but we talk about that every single time we meet, and almost nobody can do it. But at least you're able to search for it and you find it. That's a success. Then the other thing I never really know is how complete is the data for the tribe within that census tract? Like, is there stuff missing there that I'm relying on this data, but is it really true, especially when we're talking about water?
You know what, I'm going to jump in here just because a couple of things to observe about this, and this is through no fault of the folks who developed this, but there's actually 3 reservations included in this census tract. We have Palma, we have La Jolla, and we have Paula. And I can tell you 100% that the tribes are not sharing their water data for this tool. So there you go.
Yeah, no, thanks. Good. Yeah.
And so then we get into data sovereignty issues, and it's just about, how they would have to give data in order to get data. And then I think that's, you guys are grappling with it, right? It's a challenge.
Yeah, and I see, hi Bita, our new deputy secretary at Cali, PA.
Yeah. So Laura and I had a 30-minute meeting last week that lasted 2.5 hours to dig into these very questions. And even beyond tribal sovereignty, there's IHS data, right? Or HHS data. So that's what kind of concerns me, because I'm a little concerned that we're not even capturing the vulnerabilities, right? That because if you get it from, California is collecting data, say on asthma, and I could be totally off on this, but just pulling an example out of the air. But if IHS is not reporting their asthma data to California, we're missing.
Right. That's right.
So again, this is as Laura and Walker said, this is a tool to help drive funding. And so Laura mentioned disadvantaged communities, and I don't have any solutions. I just kind of wanted to chime in and really say, OEHI hears all of the concerns and is really thinking deeply about this. Lori Montserrat works with tribes. So if tribes want to submit data, and I get it, I get why tribes don't want to submit data, but I think it's something every tribe has to weigh and consider, right? What are the advantages and disadvantages? And what OEHA has observed is, I forget if it was water or air data. Well, some tribes do submit their data. So anyway, I'll stop talking because we're out of time, but I just wanted to chime in and say, they hear you and I'm there and we hear you, and we're thinking deeply about these issues.
Yeah, and nobody should ever feel attacked at these meetings, because everybody's grappling with how challenging some of these issues are. We really appreciate how thoughtful you guys are being about it. And it's coming up, and these themes are emerging across all these data sets that we look at. And so we're understanding where a lot of these key gaps really are across the country. I would love to invite anybody to let me know if this is something that you'd like to follow up more on. I don't know if there's more to say here. I think at least the California contingent might be interested, but there's other conversations happening around here. If Tribal Climate Health Project can be helpful and part of any of that, let us know. With that, I do want to say thank you to everybody for coming, especially our new members, and we will see you next month. I'll follow up by email with materials and other follow-up items. So thank you all, and thanks especially to Walker and Laura for being here.
Yeah, great
thank you
job,
so much.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
and reminder too, we will be posting the video so you can watch it again because it's that exciting. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.